You're listening to Trek.fm.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Welcome to the 602 Club, Trek FM's local watering hole, coming at you from, well, the best bar in Arendelle. I am just one of your hosts here, Matthew Rushing, and with me, as she is always, the effervescent Christy Morris.
And slightly frozen this time, might you say.
Just slightly. Just a wee bit frozen.
But loving it, you know, the cold never bothered me anyway.
That's what I hear, which is good. So we're so glad to be back here. We hope that you are going to have a great holiday week here in the United States and everywhere else. You know, if you're, well, happy Thanksgiving regardless. We're thankful that you're here listening to the 602 Club. Just a quick reminder, of course, you know, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you're doing that. Make sure you're subscribed. It definitely makes sure that you get the episode as soon as it drops. Help the show grow. You know, if you like the 602 Club, please do give us a star rating and review over there on Apple Podcasts. It's still the main place that people get podcasts. And so when they're searching for podcasts, the more reviews you have, the better. So, and then we read those reviews out on the show just to thank you for doing that. Mm-hmm. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM. We're on Twitter at TrekFM. And maybe you'd like to talk with other listeners around the world. You can do that on the Listeners Only discussion group, which is called the Babel Conference. It's housed on Facebook. What you'll need to do, just go to Facebook, type Babel into the search field, or go to the website at Trek.fm, and any of the show pages that you're perusing, there's a button that says discussion. That will let you in as well. And while you're on Trek.fm, you can send us an email. So go to the contact section, choose the 602 Club, and then that email comes to Christy and I. We want to say a huge thank you to the people who support this show and make it possible for it to come to you each and every week. We have a great list of associate producers here through Patreon. Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Wyatt Millett, and Daniel Noah. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate your support here as patron members and associate producers of the 602 Club. Now, what that means is that they support the network each and every month to make sure that the content here comes to you each and every month. Not just for the 602 Club, but the entire network. And if you've looked at our list and catalog of podcasts, there are so many coming to you each and every week, and there's no way we can do that by ourselves here as the host. So go to patreon.com/TrekFM and see how you can become a part of our team. Every little bit helps. We got some great contribution levels too, but again, it's patreon.com/TrekFM. Now, Christy, as we're, thawing out, I wondered, just kind of for you, animated sequels are always interesting to me, more so than just about any other type of sequel, honestly. And with getting Refrozen, how are you kind of feeling coming back to Arendelle after the original Frozen?
So I usually have a pretty firm no sequel policy, except for a couple of fandoms that I really love, like Star Wars or Harry Potter, those kind of thing. I felt like a lot of times when I've seen a sequel to a movie like this, to either Frozen or Lion King or something like that, the first one was so big, so larger than life. How could you possibly follow up to that and still have something that could do it justice and not break down the story that you came up with in the previous movie? So I really had high hopes for Frozen 2, but wasn't expecting a lot. And I was really surprised by a lot of the things in Frozen 2 that I felt like were so much better than many sequels I've seen. Definitely to Lion King 2. So, what about you?
I think I'm right there with you in the sense that when it comes to animated sequels, and the reason I think that I'm with you on that, where you are, which is like, yeah, I don't really necessarily want a sequel to that, is because I feel like for animated sequels, we're in a place where, for the most part, those stories are one and done. You've maximized the story for those characters usually in one film. And part of that, too, is, a lot of animated movies, especially when we think about, like Disney movies, they're not stories that are original. They're stories that are based off of something. So, like, Cinderella, right? We know what happens at the end of Cinderella, and there isn't more to the story. And so, I think, with these characters here, it's a little bit easier to do a sequel. But I still always am a little bit trepidatious. And part of that is because my thought is, do they really have a good story? Do they really have a story that is worth telling? Or is this all just about, we made a ton of money and we need to make a ton more money with, a second film? And I just worry sometimes like that it isn't about story. And that, I think that's something that bothers me when it comes to just honestly any sequel. But when I'm thinking of like an animated sequel, for some reason in my brain, it seems like it's going to be even more egregious when it comes to the idea of like, we're just Shrek 1, so we do Shrek 2, and then Shrek 3, and then Shrek 4, and it's like, by the time you're done, you've killed it.
Yeah. To
the point where I don't even know if I want to go back to the original, because I kind of have such a bad taste in my mouth. So I think that's where, coming into this, I'm like, okay, I want this to be good, but will it actually be good? That's the question in my mind.
Yeah, I think you've pinned it exactly as to why it usually bothers me having animated sequels. It's that aspect of the lack of sincerity by the studio. I often feel that it's stemming from only wanting the cash grab and not wanting to continue a great story. And so I think that's what it always boils down to that bothers me. I cannot stand a lack of sincerity. So I was really, like I said, surprised to hear that they were going to do a sequel, first of all, because originally Frozen came out in 2013 and they didn't mention a part 2 really till 2017. And then at that point, it felt a little bit like they were rushing. No pun intended. But, because then they're having this timeline that they have a goal for, that they're trying to condense everything down. And then there was that whole rumor of Elsa possibly now having a love interest. And it wasn't that I was against her necessarily having one, but I did feel like my mindset was in the same place that the studio ended up in, that Elsa's story, she was not ready yet to make that step, to have a relationship with another person, because she's still dealing with the loss of her parents and with trying to find herself. She's not in a place in her life where she would be ready to share that life with another person outside of her sister.
Yeah, no, I think I'm right there with you in all the concerns I have coming into this, and I think the other part of it too is that, we talked about, and I obviously still haven't gotten a chance to read The Snow Queen.
Yeah.
But knowing how much trouble that they had kind of adapting the story in general, them kind of then creating whole cloth another story to go along with this, that's the other thing is, like, if you really truly want to make a sequel, you hopefully are wanting to have it be the best it can be and be something where you truly think it may outshine the original.
Yes.
And I feel like it's very difficult to do that when the original was already so good. And so I feel like in many ways we're just on the same page kind of coming into this, where it's like, okay, so this could be good, and or it could be something that kind of ruins the goodwill I had with the first one.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe, I guess that we run that risk with every single, movie that we do, like every single movie that we come into. But I don't know. To me, again, with animation, I just feel like it's even harder to not feel like that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Before we truly get into like some really, because this movie goes really deep, just overall then, when you came out of the theater, where were you, with all this kind of trepidation that we both had? I am kind of wondering, where were you coming out of the theater? Did you feel like that it was a worthy enough sequel, or did you have that feeling like, man, I kind of wish that they hadn't gone there?
I felt like it completely shocked me how great it was. And maybe I'm giving away too much now, but I came away from it, first of all, with tears in my eyes. I don't know about you, but it was a very an emotional experience for me. I think that they went much deeper this time into the background of their parents, and then also to Anna possibly losing Elsa as well. That just hit me right in the feels, as they say, and I was crying and trying not to let the kids around me see that I was crying.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I think that's where I was too. And it's funny sometimes when we're on the same page with that, but I think I was in that spot where I was surprised by the movie a great deal, and part of that was, and I'll be honest, so at the beginning of the movie, we're getting into the first couple songs, and especially I think even really the main first song that we get after the storyline they tell with the parents, the change song. I was just like,
some things never change.
Okay, yeah. I don't know, maybe this is not going to live up, but the movie continued, I felt like, to get better and better and better as we went forward. So, again, not to give too much away, but I do think that absolutely 100%, I was surprised where we end up. So,
yeah.
You mentioned the idea that, this is a movie where we really get into this family. And we really get into the history of this family. In fact, we even start off with, the parents telling them the story about, what happened with their grandfather, and what happened to, their father when he was young, and the forest that existed, north of their kingdom. And so all of that together, really, I liked how this movie kind of became about the truth of history and how important it is that not only is history important, but correct history, the truth of it.
Exactly.
Because, the truth of that impacts then the present and the future. And we see that play out in the storyline and how everything almost goes horribly wrong because of this misunderstanding of actually what happened in the past. And I really appreciated the way that this movie kind of dealt with that. And I thought it was an important thing because it's also an important thing for, I think, when we're talking about anime movies, we're talking about kids' movies, they're really meant to be those morality tales for kids. And this is a really important part of this movie. And it's a really important lesson to learn in life, not just for kids, but adults to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it was incredible that they tie this to reality, that you're teaching kids this lesson, basically, for one, sort of American history about people coming in and messing with the indigenous people. And then, two, how things over time can get warped by opinion of the people that came after that incident. And so it gets to the point where it's the grandchildren who have only known what they've been told, and even that was incorrect. So they think that Arendelle and Northundra are friends, and that the bridge was a sign of peace between the two groups to work together. But they're seeing that there's still something missing with this whole forest being kept secret, and wondering why then they don't have contact with the Northundra people if that was supposed to happen. There's just these missing links where they're going, well, we were told this, but then this is the reality, so there's something missing here. So I think that was a good lesson, and also an interesting way to build on the story that we had in the first movie. It gets a little unclear when they try to say there was a group of people from each side that were trapped in time. Did you kind of feel that was confusing?
Yeah, I did. Because you had that, it felt like they were enemies, but then you had this thing where it felt like they'd been living together in the same place, like in the same. That felt really unclear to me.
Right, like I guess they were trapped in a time bubble.
I couldn't tell why was everything all okay very quickly? Was it just because there was a bigger threat?
I think so. I think because it ends up with them having to be concerned for the safety of the princess and the queen, and then also with the hill giants that Anna's awakened to come and destroy the bridge at this point. They've just got bigger fish to fry than to fight anymore. That's the vibe I got.
Yeah, okay. And I think that makes sense. I felt like it was just a little bit strange.
Yeah. But I mean, a good plot point having exactly what you're saying of the importance of your past, but then in knowing the truth. Basically, I agree that I feel like it was a really great plot point. It was a good lesson for kids. And then in general saying you need to know your past, but you need to know the whole truth about your past and not just what's been passed through a game of telephone generations till it got to you.
Yes, absolutely. I think, the idea that this is not about just completely trusting what you've heard before. The importance is knowing all sides of history, and that they really do obviously a good job of this, because it's not just the history that we know of these two different nations, but it's also the history of Elsa herself. We really dig into the history of who Elsa is and why she is the way she is. And, the fact that Elsa has always kind of felt like she is so different, it's a little bit of a curse that she has. And she feels like, in many ways, that she's not good enough, or that there's something wrong with her, or any of those things. And what we find is that nature, the earth, wind, fire, and water, the four spirits, there's a fifth, and who Elsa is the one that bridges between magic and the real world. And we also find out that the reason that Anna doesn't have powers is because it's the two of them together, working together. And so I think I really like how we dig into the history of these characters, and we answer that question finally for Elsa, and we, in many ways, we kind of free her to be who she is fully, and we also free Anna to be who she is fully. And I think that's a great storyline for both of them, and it really has to do with them. They can only truly move forward with their lives when they know their past. And I think that's a really, powerful story.
I think for me, there was one drawback to that piece of it though, with the elements and Elsa being the fifth element.
The fifth element. I totally didn't think about that, but you're absolutely right.
That was all I could think about when they're like, but it's you. I'm like, and she's the fifth one, and she has them all together. And she's in the middle.
Oh my gosh, she's the fifth element. Oh my gosh, you're 100% right. Wow, they just they just made Fifth Element for kids.
Yes.
Lilu. Oh gosh. Wow, that's hysterical.
Yeah. So, okay, of course, though, I would say maybe most of the audience, I would think, that goes to see Frozen 2 may not have ever seen The Fifth Element.
Well, yes, all those kids, but man, you're right. I think a lot of parents would hopefully pick up on that as well. Oh my gosh, you just blew my mind.
I hope somebody else does. Oh, you're welcome.
That's really funny.
But yeah.
Okay.
That was all I could think of. As soon as they're like, yeah, there was wind, there was earth, there was fire, there was water. I was like, and then there was the fifth.
I just expected an Earth, Wind, and Fire song to start playing, you know? Yeah, no, exactly. That's funny. It's funny because talking about that part of their history, though, I mean, because this movie is, what I liked about this movie, Toy Story 4 in many ways was a story about parents coming to grasp with the fact that their kids don't need them in the same way anymore. I mean, that's what that movie is really about. And this movie is really about growing up. It's about transitioning from childhood to adulthood and truly figuring out who you are and where your gifts are best utilized, and not just for yourself, but for everyone. And so I really liked that because, again, once Elsa and Anna know their past and what has brought them where they are, it sets them free to actually be the best versions of themselves for the present and for the future. And I thought that was great because, even in the first movie, you can kind of tell that Anna would probably make a better queen of Arendelle than Elsa would.
Oh, yeah.
And now that they've made that switch, it really makes sense.
Does it feel like maybe the studio went back and said, I think we made a mistake the first time making Elsa queen. She's not really a people person. I think we need to bring Anna in here, and she's going to actually relate better to the people, kind of like maybe an elected official would or something. It just... Yeah, it feels better suited.
Yeah, well, and the thing with, obviously with Elsa, it makes sense, too, because there is something otherworldly about Elsa in many ways. She is somebody who is more connected to not just her, the people, but she's connected to all parts. Like she's on the spiritual plane as well as the physical plane. And therefore, she was being hampered from really doing the job she was born to do because she was having to worry too much about just the physical world, really. That's the way I kind of put it in my brain. And because she's meant to be almost like that, she's meant to be the spiritual bridge between magic and the real world, or the world. The living world. Yeah. And so, to put it in that kind of spiritual context almost, it's like she's meant to be a priestess, not a queen.
Right. Yeah. And with her, I think that was the thing that really blew me away the most with this movie, as far as a pleasant surprise goes, is that I felt like, I guess in the first Frozen movie, although I loved it, that it was more about Elsa went off on her own because she felt rejected, and then Anna going to save her. And that it wasn't really as much Elsa's story of finding herself as it is in this movie. And so the most joyful, wonderful scene to me is Elsa going through the water and taming the horse and riding over to the source of where her powers come from, and going through that whole scene with the music to discover that what she'd been searching for all along was herself. And that, she found out that her mother was that tie to the magical world, but that, it sounds kind of cheesy, but everything that Elsa needed was inside herself. And she just had to actually believe in herself and learn the truth of her past and then put it all together and that way finally have the self-esteem that she needed to be her own person.
Well, and I mean, that's where that history comes in, because that history fills in those gaps for her so that she can truly know herself. Mm-hmm. There's the famous quote of "know thyself." And to truly know yourself, you have to know where you've been so you can know where you can go, where you're going. And by unlocking the past, she's actually able to then unlock the future for herself, because she, like you were saying, she truly knows who she's born to be. And I think that was something that I kind of liked too. It's like about this movie when we're talking about growing up, the gifts that we've been given and the person that we're meant to be is not just for ourselves. It's for everyone. And Elsa had to be able to find the ability to use her gifts, not just for her, because she even with her being accepted finally by the end of the first movie and coming to grips with everything, like there was still this part of her that felt disconnected, and part of that is because she wasn't truly able, she wasn't the best version of herself, and she needed to be all that she could be, but not in the army. She needed to be the fifth element, like you said, and because that was truly going to unlock her full potential as a person. And in many ways, like we were talking about with Anna, Anna is through this journey able to unlock her full potential, which is somebody who's much stronger, much braver, and maybe even much wiser than she even thought. Because she's always been in the shadow of Elsa, but she was able to finally come out of the shadow and realize that she can do things on her own. But she was also able to realize that, where I think maybe it's okay to not be so codependent with her sister, and to be her own person. And so I think that was one of the things I really liked for both of them. It's them growing up.
Yeah. And I think part of growing up that sometimes people unfortunately have to go through is that feeling of loss in multiple ways for them. It was not only losing their parents, but I kind of saw the scene of Anna in the cave by herself as also a sibling going through their older sibling growing up and leaving home.
Yeah. It's a great point.
So, like you're saying, like that, having to learn to not be codependent anymore, because that is really hard. I mean, when you're used to having that older sibling always at home with you to kind of guide you or take the brunt of the punishment if the two of you did something wrong or whatever, you always had a buffer. And then now you're going to have to just figure it out on your own. It does feel like you've lost someone.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think that's something that I hadn't even really thought of, but, anybody who's had a sibling leave home, and they've been really close, yeah, absolutely, because you're losing a close friend, but there's, in many ways, there's something even more to it because you're not just, because you're family, right? And there's something different about family. So, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And, what was interesting there, too, because the third person of the group that we really kind of see, having to go through this is also Kristoff, and making that, coming to grips with kind of like truly being comfortable with who he is, which is to not be somebody who's and really enjoys being in the limelight. Or, to, he doesn't want to be the person who has to be anybody who he's not, like at the very end of the movie,
right?
Like, where he's wearing the clothes and he's like, "You get this for 20 minutes." Like he knows exactly who he is and who he's meant to be. But he also for him, it's that story of transitioning. Like, do I truly love this person? Do they truly love me? And are we going to be able to give each other and sacrifice for each other in the way that we need to be a good couple? And I liked that storyline because it's very true, and it's a part of like growing up and figuring out if the person you think you love actually loves you and you love them in a way that's beneficial for each other or harmful for each other. And that's the story we get with Kristoff. I thought that was really nice.
Yeah, second to Elsa's story of finding herself was my love of Kristoff's story, and I think he got the best song of the whole movie with Lost in the Woods. So I'm putting that out there. It's been playing on repeat on my phone from YouTube because I need to just buy the soundtrack. I love that he gets more of the limelight this time and that they go this route and really, I guess, lean into the story they were kind of telling before with Kristoff, where he was making fun of Anna for saying, "You've only known this guy for a day and you were going to marry him? What's wrong with you?" And so then they've shown how you actually get to know someone and then end up falling in love with them because you know everything about them and realize that you care about them, not because you're just smitten in one day. And so then in this movie, they've taken it further and shown that they've got to the point where Kristoff is ready to get married to Anna and has to figure out if she feels the same. And then it's also really cute for being a person who's married at this point in my own life. I didn't get that feeling that my husband went through of the anxiety of having to ask someone to marry you. So I'll never understand that. So seeing that in action on TV actually makes me understand a little bit better and empathize with what someone goes through trying to ask someone to marry them.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nerve-wracking, trying to figure it out, trying to plan it, trying to make it, like, because you want to make it perfect for the person. And I just loved how he's having such a hard time, like, figuring out the right words to say. And kind of classically,
and insulting
everything that he says, she's taking the exact wrong way. And, him just him having a hard time finding the words, to express how he feels and all of that. Yes, I absolutely agree. I love that. And so just kind of watching these characters, obviously this whole movie really is about these characters growing up. And I really I think that's good, because a lot of the kids who liked the original Frozen, they're growing up too, and they're in those places where, so in many ways it kind of felt like the Harry Potter series where each book kind of grows with the kids that are reading it. This felt like that we're making this movie for fans of Frozen, and those original fans of Frozen are quite a bit older now. And so they're in a different place in life. So yeah, I liked that a lot.
And what was your favorite song?
Oh, it has to be Lost in the Woods. I mean, the fact that they did an 80s hair band song for him, and they even did the cheesy music video style for it, it was 100% perfect. I loved it.
So I'm going to blow your mind again. I completely, I was thinking in the moment, listening to it and seeing the screenshots, that it reminded me of a song in particular. And I was going, what is it? I can't put my finger on it. Oh, it wasn't one particular song. It was a band. It was REO Speedwagon.
Yes, that's exactly what 100%. I thought when I heard it. I was like, this sounds like an REO Speedwagon song.
And especially with the reindeer chiming in later.
It was hilarious. I do think, for me, that's really the best song in the movie. I will say that I feel like the rest of the songs aren't as memorable, especially as the original Frozen, and that's always a hard thing to do, especially when you have Do You Want to Build a Snowman that just became and Let It Go, and, and I love Fixer Upper from that movie. This, I felt like none of the songs, other than Lost in the Woods, really kind of struck a chord and like felt super memorable. The rest of them were great, but they weren't amazing.
I'll kind of give an honorable mention to Show Yourself, because I was saying, that was my favorite story arc of the movie, and I felt like it really blew me away how the song paired with the animation. And that's something I want to get to in a minute too, is the animation this time around. But I felt like Show Yourself really was such a metaphor for Elsa's transformation that it was beautiful in more ways than just the music to me.
Yeah. And I think the thing that I really liked in the movie, on top of the music, was when I think of songs, it's not the most memorable song, but when Anna's singing The Next Right Thing. And I think that's my favorite part of the film. And honestly, I think my favorite theme of the movie, when Anna feels lost and she feels like she's lost that person who's her guide, what drives her forward is something that they've said to each other before, which is just to do the next right thing. And I really loved this idea of that even when it feels impossible, the best thing to do, the only thing to do, is to do the next right thing. And in many ways, what you kind of saw in the movie too is like Anna becomes a picture of, when you're in the dark, the only way to go is towards the light. And she becomes kind of a picture of that, like almost like spiritual metamorphosis that happens. And I really appreciated watching her. The only thing that she could find that could make a difference was doing what she knew to be right next, and then the next, and then the next. And so you just keep taking that next right step. And I thought that was really beautiful. And especially I feel like in a world where it didn't seem like we're just talking about what's right for you. It really felt like we're talking about the difference between like right and wrong, even when it's hard.
Yes.
Because, for Anna, she knew that she had to destroy the dam. And she knew that was going to be, that was the hardest thing to do. That was also the right thing to do. And it was the right thing to do regardless of what it meant for Arendelle. And she was willing to sacrifice to do the right thing. And I thought that was such a powerful theme for the movie.
Absolutely. I think that you've hit the point exactly when you say that it's sometimes the hardest choice to make, to do the right thing. But we really, when we think about it, know in the situation what the right thing is and the wrong thing is. It's just that fear and anxiety of, but in this case, the right thing is a really, really hard choice that I don't want to do because I know it could destroy Arendelle, but I know it's the right thing. So, I agree completely. I think it was huge that she made that decision in spite of all of the things that she knew would happen and trusted her gut and went with it. And then I also really related her going through that to someone going through grief, that all you can do is one step at a time. And like you said, do the next right thing. But it's because if you take it all at once, it feels so overwhelming. You have to just do it a little at a time.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And on top of that, I think, we got to this theme of love, and that, they talk about, with all these things changing, that the one thing that lasts, the one thing that remains is love, and that it kind of transcends space and time. It's kind of very interstellar of them, this idea. But love here, again, as in the first movie, is the thing that becomes the direct opposition to fear. And we saw what drives their grandfather to dislike the Northundra and their magic is kind of this fear of magic and this kind of hate of magic. And so it's what leads him to create the dam and create this, war with them. And so I thought that was really, tying into the next right thing. love is what allows you then to do the next right thing, and it's not just love for yourself, but it's love for others. And that's where, love allows Anna to do what she needs to do, the love she has for her sister, the love she has for Kristoff and Olaf, the love she has for her people, but she also loves these other people that she doesn't even know. And I thought that was really cool. And I think that you kind of see that with Elsa as well, because Elsa sometimes feels like she's so driven by just trying to find the answers to things. And I thought it was interesting that, again, she that her and Anna work together this time. She has to sacrifice herself to be able to find the answer, and then she sends that answer to Anna, who finishes the job, so that they're able to work in concert together instead of it, and really it's their love for each other again, and their love for other people that allows them to be able to conquer this. Instead of living in fear anymore. And I thought that was it was nice to see how that theme kind of continued from the first movie.
Right. That's the thing that's going to end up saving everyone every time is love, and not fear and misunderstanding getting in your way and keeping you from wanting to reach out to people. I think that they did a really beautiful job, too, of making it what you were saying earlier, Matt, where now they're making Elsa ruler of the magical area and Anna ruler of Arendelle, and then that the two of them will continue to work together to keep those two worlds in harmony now that they've learned the truth and brought everything out in the open. I just really thought that was a beautiful thing to add to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of the Northundra, how did you feel about them in the film?
I thought that they could have gotten a little more story on screen. I think that it was so much about Arendelle's side of things, and they didn't really explain a lot about how the Northundra people came to be living there in the first place. They kind of told a little bit that they weren't magical people, but that they used the gifts of the magical forest around them. But there really wasn't that much three-dimensional character building of that group of people. But, it was cute that they had sort of a one character bond with Anna and another bond with Kristoff and Sven and help him try to do the proposal. And then also having the aspect of the leader of her grandfather's people in Arendelle trying to work with the leader of the Northundra people now that they know what's going on. But yeah, they're interesting. They remind me of Incas or Alaskan people.
Yes. The Inuit people. No, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I feel like the Northundra were interesting. I just feel like they're underutilized in the movie. And, you kind of, you had the one who becomes friends with Elsa a little bit and Anna, and then the one that kind of, becomes friends with Sven and Kristoff, but there isn't more to them, and they feel very I think shallow as characters because there's no depth to them. They're just kind of there for other characters, not really for them in and of themselves, and so that was too bad. And I kind of would love to have seen, you mentioned all the way at the beginning, having this what is the dynamic between these people? Because it seemed like they're at war with each other, but then it seems like they live in the same place. And then you have the captain of the guard for her grandfather, and then the leader of the Northundra people. You had them seem to be very close to each other, and that seemed kind of weird. And then, of course, he goes back to Arendelle and, meets his long-lost love. So it was just strange. That part of the story I felt like needed a little bit more fleshing out.
Yeah, I agree. It felt very, like you said, shallow, kind of surface level, more of a means to an end plot wise rather than really developing their story.
Yeah.
But what little we got was good and helped to kind of introduce the idea of there being all these different elemental spirits. I have to say the fire spirit was my favorite.
Oh yeah, my wife and I went with our friend, and she squeed like crazy when the little fire lizard, that was her favorite.
When his fire got put out.
Yeah. You mentioned the animation, and I definitely felt like you're really on to something because the movie looks gorgeous. Even, just having rewatched the original Frozen, they've taken this to a whole new level. The water effects for the animation were amazing. That water horse spirit was incredible. The way the leaves would rustle around them and things like that was just outstanding. The scene where the water is cascading down the fjord, coming for Arendelle, and then she stops it. It was just... it's so cool.
You felt like that was real rushing ocean water and it was going to kill everyone.
Yes, I absolutely did.
No, I'm glad especially that you mentioned specifically with the water spirit was apparently called Nock, N-O-K-K. That was apparently a considerable amount of time spent during animation was just on that creature because they mentioned in Moana when they were trying to make the water do certain things on its own, like its own personality, they did even more of a stretch with that this time, trying to make this water horse creature. So that really impressed me because I noticed it and it looked great.
That's cool.
And then I also thought it was interesting, apparently to create the wind spirit Gale, as Olaf called her, they had to actually create a new tool called Swoop.
Wow.
Which I thought was interesting.
That's awesome.
So yeah, some groundbreaking animation stuff, which I always love for trivia.
100%. No, I agree with you. I mean, the movie just looked gorgeous. I think just randomly, the last thing that I just kind of in the random tidbit of the film, I loved Olaf telling the story because it felt like Ant-Man had a baby with Return of the Jedi. And so it was like, Luis telling the story with C-3PO type of telling the story to the Ewoks. And I loved that. I thought it was really clever and funny, and I enjoyed it, and I laughed the whole time. And then I laughed at the stinger at the end when he finishes the story, when he's like, and I forget what happened, but it's okay because I'm alive.
Yeah, or no, I think every time he says, and I live.
So,
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because I absolutely did not expect it. Loved it. I think that it's a great new way to involve Olaf in the story because otherwise he's kind of much more of a side character this time, which I think was kind of better story-wise most of the time. But yeah, having him come in and catch people up that had been gone for a while was hilarious. And then even adding it again at the end just further cemented the joke.
Well, and I would say too, I guess this will just be the Olaf section, but I think that with him, they were really skirting the line, and they probably went over it a little bit with just how over the top he was about like growing up, and I felt like that hit it too much on the nose, the carrot. I think that they should have pulled that back a little bit because it was just a little bit too much.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you do feel at a certain point, okay, he's mentioned it several times. We get it. It's about growing up.
Yeah. And it ceases to be funny. Like, it's funny the first couple times, but when it's like the 6th or 7th time that he's saying it, it's just not funny anymore. So,
yeah.
Well, so what would you rate Frozen 2?
I'm just gonna have to give it a perfect 5 out of 5. Although I had a couple of nitpicky things, it really, really impressed me. And like I said, the soundtrack is on loop in my head. I need to just buy it because I'm going to be singing it every day anyway. So yeah, I give it a 5 out of 5. Highly recommend it. And if you go see it in the theater, make sure you wait for the stinger at the end after the credits.
I'd say this is probably 4.25 out of 5 because I think I gave Frozen 4 out of 5. And I actually liked this more than Frozen. I think it's a better movie, honestly. And part of that is because I think there's just more depth. And, you know, like we said, this movie is for a slightly older generation, right? You know, it's about growing up and everything. So I really liked that, and I really enjoyed this, where they took the story. I think this needs to be the end. I think they need to not make another Frozen. I honestly feel like that, because there was even that moment where Olaf is like, "Are we good? Is this like going to become a normal thing?" And Elsa's like, "No, we're done." And they need to just be done, because I feel like the storyline for these characters, they're where they need to be. You know, they don't really have any other room to grow. Elsa knows exactly who she is and who she's meant to be. Anna is the same way. She has Kristoff. They're going to get married. You know, this is the point where we can just let the conjecture run in our heads, and we can just have happily ever after for these characters. So, 4.25 out of 5. So, but it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show, recommendations. So, Christy, what will you recommend this week?
I actually kind of struggled this week because at first I was going, oh man, have I been watching anything other than The Mandalorian lately? Yes, I have. And I've got to tell you, if you have not seen the show Supernatural, you are missing out. My husband and I were very late to the game because I think it's on its 16th and final season. Wow. But it's all on Netflix. And basically, without giving any spoilers, it's the story of two brothers who are hunting supernatural things, trying to save the world. And it's got a lot of really great drama and family dynamic of these guys growing up and having to deal with their past and all of the scary things that they deal with all the, you know, supernatural stuff. But it's also got a lot of humor, and Jared Padalecki and Jensen Ackles play the brothers and are incredible actors. I mean, I really didn't know the depth of it until I saw this. Jared Padalecki was Dean on Gilmore Girls, so it's a much more better use of his acting skills this time. So I highly suggest it. It's not for kids, but it's really great show.
Cool. That's one that I just have never gotten into, but maybe one day when it's over, you know, I'll take the plunge and hit all 16
If you liked Buffy, you would like this.
So,
yeah.
So I am going to recommend DC Universe Titans. Really been enjoying the second season. It's really expanded here in the second season, and I can't wait. We're on the penultimate episode right now, and so I'm really excited to see how this season will wrap up. It's just been a good show. No, this is not like the CW shows. It's definitely not for your family. It's an adult show. But I like the seriousness that they take the characters with and just the world that they've created. And I'm just really enjoying it. It's been renewed for a third season, so it's going to be back on DC Universe. So I highly encourage you, check it out if you can. If you haven't been watching it on DC Universe, it's worth it. I've enjoyed having the DC Universe app because they also did a new season of Young Justice. I watched through all the old seasons of Young Justice. I got a chance to finally watch through all the Justice League cartoons, and now I need to go to Justice League Unlimited, because that's been really fun. You know, they got a ton of the DC animated movies on there, and so yeah, it's great. So Titans is definitely my recommend for the week. But Christy, if anybody wants to catch up with you and find you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at BespinBell. And you can find me on a couple of other shows. I do a show with my friend Teresa Delgado called Sabers and Spells. We talk about Star Wars or Harry Potter, or maybe next we're going to talk about Mandalorian. I don't know. We'll see. We actually just recently talked about Disney Plus, so maybe we'll dive more into Disney stuff. I don't know. And I also do a show called Planet Leia on the Faint the Tracks network with 5 other women from around the world talking about all of our viewpoints on Star Wars topics. And lastly, I also do a segment once a month on the Star Wars Report show called Fashion in 5, where I talk about men's and women's Star Wars fashion.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Vero under the name MattRushing02. I'm here in the network. I do The Orb with Chris Jones. When we get a chance, we get together and talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I am also on the Nerd Party Network doing 2 shows. One is called Owlpost. I do that with Drea Kaufman. We talk about Harry Potter. We do that 1 chapter at a time. It's been a lot of fun as we're in the Half-Blood Prince right now. You can find me doing Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills, talking about Star Wars each and every week. It's such a blast, so make sure you check that out. In fact, this week is our annual Thanks Gungan episode where we talk about all of the things that we are thankful for in Star Wars. So it was a lot of fun this week. And last but not least, you can find me doing Cinema Stories with my good friend Courtney, and that is where we take films and talk about them through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for joining us.
And y'all come back now, you hear?
Thank you.